Sarah got an anonymous letter accusing her neighbor of rigging votes. She investigated with a detective, uncovering hidden photos. But when they spied on Elias, they saw him drag out what looked like a corpse. What happens next? "I know what you've been doing, Mark." Sarah's voice sliced through the dim hum of the community center's fluorescent lights, sharp and unrelenting, her fingers clutching the crumpled envelope like a talisman against the shadows creeping along the walls. The paper inside seared her palm. Anonymous, typed in stark black ink, spilling accusations that twisted her gut. Rigged elections for the neighborhood watch, whispers that poisoned house deals, favors bought with secrets harvested from backyard fences. Her eyes flicked to Mark Thompson, standing rigid by the coffee urn, his smile frozen like wax under the harsh glow. Mark's hand paused mid-pour, steam curling from the pot in lazy spirals that carried the bitter scent of overbrewed grounds, thick and acrid. He set it down with deliberate care, the ceramic clink echoing too loudly in the sparse room. Around them, folding chairs scraped against linoleum as a handful of residents shifted uneasily. But Tommy Reed loomed closest, his broad shoulders blocking the exit like a sentinel carved from oak. Tommy's gaze bored into Mark, protective instinct flaring hot in his chest. He'd come here tonight to safeguard the fragile trust of their street, not watch it shatter. "What the hell is this?" Mark's tone stayed even, polished, the perfect neighbor's veneer cracking just enough to reveal the nerves jittering beneath. He stepped forward, extending a hand for the letter, but Sarah pulled it back, her caution a shield against the paranoia whispering that eyes watched from every corner. Cameras in the vents, neighbors with notebooks. The air thickened with the faint must of old pamphlets stacked on shelves, the distant buzz of a vending machine devouring quarters, relentless and mechanical. Tommy snatched the page before Mark could touch it, his calloused fingers smudging the edges as he scanned the words. Manipulation. Blackmail. This says you've been pulling strings on everything. The park renovation vote, even that break-in last month. His voice rumbled low, vigilance sharpening to a blade. He glanced at Sarah, urging her on without words, his drive to shield them all coiling tighter. But impulse simmered underneath, a spark ready to ignite if Mark so much as blinked wrong. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears, curiosity warring with the dread pooling cold in her stomach. The letter's details clawed at her. Dates matching odd gatherings at Mark's porch, names of families who'd suddenly moved away. She'd always sensed the undercurrents in their tidy suburb, where lawns stayed manicured and smiles hid barbs. But this fractured it all. Exposing him could brand her the pariah, whispers turning to isolation. Yet burying it meant letting the rot spread. Mark's laugh came out forced, a hollow bark that didn't reach his eyes. Anonymous trash. Someone stirring trouble to undermine us. Us, the ones holding this place together. He leaned in, voice dropping to a confidential hush, seeking validation in their nods, control slipping like sand through his fists. The room's walls seemed to press closer, posters of lost pets and bake sale flyers peeling at the corners, a testament to the community's fraying edges. Tommy folded the letter with a snap, shoving it into his pocket. "We're not letting this slide, not on my watch." His stance widened, aggressive undercurrents flexing in his jaw, ready to charge if lies poured out. Sarah nodded, unease threading through her like wire, the weight of secrets igniting a spark she couldn't douse. Dread for what fractures next, curiosity pulling her deeper into the web. The center's clock ticked onward, relentless, as trust splintered in the stale air. Hours blurred into a suffocating haze as Sarah paced her dimly lit kitchen, the envelope's accusations gnawing at her resolve like rats in the walls. Doubt coiled tighter. Mark's face from neighborhood barbecues, now shadowed by suspicion. His easy smile, a mask for buried rot. By dusk the next evening, she forced herself toward his porch, heart pounding against the oppressive twilight, every step fueling the dread that his charm would only sharpen the blade of truth. It's not like the watch committee decisions just happen by accident, is it, Linda? All those late-night meetings you organized, pulling strings like a puppeteer with the voting tallies. Sarah's words hung in the stale air of Linda's kitchen, the scent of overbrewed coffee clinging to the yellowed curtains like a persistent fog, heavy and suffocating. She leaned against the chipped formica counter, her smile forced, casual, as if this were just neighborly chit-chat over borrowed sugar. But her pulse thrummed in her ears, a rapid drumbeat urging her to probe deeper. The envelope from the community center burned in her memory, its accusations now a splinter under her skin. Mark's involvement, yes, but whispers of others, threads leading here. Linda paused mid-stir, her wooden spoon scraping the enamel pot with a metallic whine that set Sarah's teeth on edge. She turned, eyes wide with that practiced warmth, the kind that wrapped around you like a too-tight scarf. "Oh, Sarah, darling, you're imagining things again. Those meetings? Pure democracy. Everyone had a say." Her laugh tinkled out, light and disarming, but it fractured at the edges, revealing the strain beneath. She set the spoon down, wiping her hands on a faded floral apron, stepping closer, too close, her perfume a cloying veil of lavender that invaded Sarah's space. "You've been so tense lately. Come, sit. Tommy's just in the garage, tinkering. He'll tell you the same." From the doorway, Tommy emerged, grease-streaked rag in hand, his broad shoulders filling the frame like a barricade. His eyes flicked between them, sharp and assessing, the vigilant scan of a man who'd patrolled these streets one too many times. "What's this about the watch?" His voice rumbled low, protective edge honed by years of standing guard. He didn't smile, but his nod to Sarah carried the weight of shared vigilance. Until now, when doubt crept in, shadowing his features. Was he in on it? Protecting more than just the block? Sarah's throat tightened, the casual facade cracking under the pressure of her own paranoia. She wanted the truth, needed it to stitch the unraveling community back together. But one wrong word could brand her the hysterical outsider. "Just curious, Tommy. After that envelope at the center, Mark's name all over it, I thought maybe you two knew something. The votes, the shifts in power, it feels off." Linda's hand fluttered to her chest, a gesture of feigned hurt, but her gaze held steady, calculating. "An envelope? Sounds like mischief makers stirring trouble. Our family's built this neighborhood. Reputation means everything. I'd never—" She trailed off, reaching for Sarah's arm, fingers cool and insistent, like vines seeking purchase. The touch sent a shiver racing up Sarah's spine, dread pooling in her gut. Charm, yes, but laced with control, a facade that masked the manipulator's art. Tommy crossed his arms, the rag dangling like a noose. "Mark's a fool if he's meddling, but us? We're clean." His tone brooked no argument, aggressive undercurrents simmering, ready to erupt if pushed. Yet his eyes darted to Linda, a flicker of something unspoken. Complicity? Fear of exposure? Sarah pulled back, the kitchen suddenly a cage of polished surfaces and hidden barbs. The coffee pot hissed on the stove, steam curling like accusations. Suspicion coiled tighter, the charm only sharpening the blade of her doubt. They were too smooth, too united. Fracture lines spiderwebbed through the air, the community's trust splintering under her gaze. She had to keep digging, even as isolation loomed, a shadow at her heels. That accusation lingered like a shadow, as Sarah stormed out into the gathering dusk, her pulse hammering with unresolved fury. Hours blurred into a restless vigil, the neighbor's house across the street drawing her gaze like a magnet. By midnight, unable to shake the web of deceit, she slipped through the unlocked back gate, heart thudding against her ribs. The air grew thick, oppressive, as she crept through the dim interior, every creak amplifying the dread coiling in her gut. "What exactly are you trying to pull here, Linda?" Tommy Reed's voice sliced through the dim hallway, his broad shoulders blocking the faint light from the kitchen behind him. Linda Thompson froze mid-step, her manicured fingers clutching the edge of a floral print side table. The wood creaked under her grip, a sharp protest against the sudden tension. She forced a smile, thin and brittle as cracked porcelain, but her eyes darted toward the detective standing just inside the front door. "Tommy, this is unnecessary. Sarah's just upset. Everyone's on edge after the committee mess." Detective Harris stepped forward, his polished shoes thudding softly on the worn oak floorboards. He scanned the space with the precision of a man who'd seen too many secrets unravel in ordinary homes. "Mrs. Thompson, we're not here for tea. Those voting irregularities? They point to something deeper. Mind if we take a look around?" His tone carried no warmth, only the cold edge of obligation, his skepticism etching lines deeper into his forehead. Linda's laugh came out forced, a high-pitched trill that echoed off the wallpapered walls, peeling slightly at the corners, like forgotten whispers. "Look around. This is my home, not some crime scene." But her posture shifted, shoulders hunching as if bracing against an invisible wind, her drive to shield her family's name clashing with the anxiety bubbling beneath. Tommy ignored her protest, his vigilant gaze sweeping the narrow corridor. He was here for the neighborhood, for the kids playing unsupervised in the streets lately, for the way trust had frayed like old rope. "We need to know if you're involved, Linda, for everyone's sake." His words masked the fear gnawing at him, the dread of failing his wife, his daughter, the block he'd sworn to watch over. Impatience flickered in his chest, urging him to push harder. Harris nodded toward the closed door at the hall's end, a plain slab of wood blending into the shadows. "Start there." Routine check. He moved first, turning the knob with gloved hands, but it stuck. Jammed? Or locked? Tommy shouldered past, his protective instinct overriding caution. The door gave way with a splintering crack, revealing, not the expected closet, but a steep, descending stairwell cloaked in dust motes that danced in the intruding light. The air below hit them like a slap, stale, metallic, laced with the faint rot of damp paper and something sharper, like fear distilled into scent. Tommy descended first, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating shelves crammed with yellowing files and trinkets. A child's locket, engraved with initials too familiar, a faded Polaroid of a woman mid-scream, her face blurred, but eyes wide with terror. Photographs lined the walls, pinned haphazardly, dozens of them, capturing fractured moments of lives upended. A man slumped in an alley, bruises blooming like ink. A family portrait slashed across with red marker. Mementos from accidents the town had whispered about for years, all tied to the strings Linda had pulled. Linda's gasp echoed from above, her footsteps halting at the threshold. "You can't! That's private!" Her voice cracked, the controlling facade splintering as vulnerability clawed through. She feared exposure, the weakness it would reveal, her manipulative shadow laid bare. Harris's face hardened, his cynicism confirmed in the grotesque gallery. "This isn't private, Mrs. Thompson. This is evidence." He snapped photos with his phone, the flash popping like gunfire in the confined space. Tommy's stomach twisted, dread coiling tight as he recognized a photo of his own street, a shadow lurking in the background. His family? Had they been targets? The room pressed in, walls seeming to pulse with the victim's silent accusations, fear rooting him in place, even as his impulsive side screamed to confront her now. The community's fracture deepened here, suspicion hardening into something irreversible, the air thick with the promise of unraveling lives. Hours blurred into a suffocating night, the hallway confrontation replaying in Linda's mind like a fractured reel, Tommy's shadowed glare, the unspoken secrets clawing at her chest. Betrayal coiled tight, a venomous dread that sleep couldn't dull, her pulse hammering against the oppressive silence of the house. By dawn, suspicion had hardened into resolve. She couldn't merely wonder anymore. Grabbing her coat, she stepped into the gray light, eyes fixed on the neighbor's door across the fence, ready to unearth the truth. Linda snatched the drawer handle and yanked it open, papers spilling across the oak desk like shattered secrets. Her breath came in sharp bursts, the air thick with the metallic tang of old ink and her own rising panic. Tommy's words echoed in her skull. Accusations about Mark's late nights, whispers of shadowed figures in their backyard. She couldn't let it fester, not in her house. not with the family's name hanging by a thread. "Mark!" Her voice cracked the silence, a whip snap. She rifled through the mess, fingers snagging on crumpled receipts, a keychain she didn't recognize, cold, unfamiliar weight. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat a accusation. Perfect neighbor? He'd been slipping, his smiles too polished, his absences too convenient. The discovery clawed at her. That hidden compartment in his briefcase last week, glimpsed by accident, now screaming for inspection. Footsteps thudded from the hallway, heavy and evasive. Mark appeared in the study doorway, his tie askew, eyes darting like cornered prey. "Linda, what's this now? I heard the door slam. Tommy again?" She straightened, clutching the keychain, its jagged edges biting her palm. "Don't play the innocent. He knows. About the calls, the meetings. Tell me it's nothing." Her words sliced fast, laced with the dread coiling in her gut. Uphold the reputation, she would, even if it meant tearing him apart. Weakness? Never. But the anxiety gnawed, a shadow behind her facade, urging her to twist the knife. Mark's face paled, his hands flexing at his sides as if strangling invisible doubts. He stepped closer, voice low, controlling the space between them. "You're imagining things. Tommy's stirring trouble, that's all. We're fine. The perfect couple, right?" His laugh forced out, brittle as dry leaves. But his eyes betrayed him, flickering with that deep hunger for approval, the fraud beneath the charm cracking wide. The doorbell buzzed, insistent, cutting through the tension like a blade. Linda crossed the room in 3 strides, flinging the door open. Detective Harris stood there, trenchcoat rumpled, his gaze sharp as shattered glass. Rain hadn't fallen, but the night pressed in, oppressive, the streetlights casting long, accusing shadows on the porch. "Miss Thompson," Harris said, voice gravel rough, stepping inside without invitation. His skepticism etched every line of his face, but determination burned beneath. A drive to fix this unraveling town, to shield the fragile from the wolves. Yet his cynicism whispered distrust, eyes scanning Mark like he already knew the rot. "You called about disturbances?" "Said it couldn't wait." Linda slammed the door shut, the thud echoing her resolve. She thrust the keychain forward. "Look at this. Found it in his desk. And Tommy Reed, he cornered me tonight. Said he's seen things. Strange figures, watching our house." "Mark's been out there, hasn't he? Covering something up." Her words tumbled, victims' tales bleeding into paranoia, the social threads tightening like a noose. She shared it all, the unease from neighbors' hushed stories, the prickling sense of eyes in the dark, each revelation stoking the fire. Mark whirled on her, face twisting. "You called the cops? On me? After everything?" Betrayal flooded his voice, raw and venomous, his control shattering. He lunged for the keychain, but Harris intercepted, hand firm on his shoulder. "Easy," Harris growled, eyes narrowing. "Let's hear it all. No one's leaving till we do." The room shrank, walls closing in, the air humming with unspoken fractures. Linda's chest tightened, dread blooming cold and absolute. Mark's gaze met hers, not with denial but a flicker of confirmation. The perfect image crumbled, exposing the fraud, the manipulation she'd ignored for so long. Paranoia gripped them all, victims in their own web, the betrayal sinking deep as hidden knives. Her fingers lingered on the scattered papers, each scribble fueling the paranoia that clawed at her chest. Mark's secrets intertwined with Tommy's warnings, the house closing in like a vice. Sleep evaded her that night, the oppressive darkness amplifying every creak. By dawn, resolve twisted into desperate need. She slipped out the back door, the chill air biting as she crossed the dew-slit grass toward the neighbor's shadowed yard. Dread pulsed in her veins, the unseen eyes already sensing her intrusion. The door slammed shut behind Sarah, echoing like a verdict in the narrow hallway of the community center. She froze, her pulse hammering against her ribs, as Mark Thompson's shadow stretched long across the scuffed linoleum, swallowing the fluorescent glow. "You think I didn't see you poking around my yard last night?" Mark's voice sliced through the stale air, low, and edged with something sharper than anger. Calculation. He stepped closer, his loafers clicking deliberately, each one a measured claim on the space between them. Sarah's notebook slipped from her fingers, pages fanning open to reveal her frantic scribbles. Timestamps of flickering lights in his window, notes on the way his garage light buzzed unnaturally late. Detective Harris, lingering by the folding table stacked with styrofoam cups and half-eaten donuts from the impromptu neighborhood meeting, straightened his tie. His eyes narrowed, skepticism etching deeper lines into his forehead. He'd come to listen, to sift truth from the growing murmur of complaints, strange noises, missing tools, eyes in the dark. But this felt like a spark ready to ignite the powder keg. "Thompson," he said, voice steady but laced with that ingrained distrust. "Let's keep this civil. We're all here to talk, not accuse." Mark ignored him, his gaze locked on Sarah like a vice. She could smell his aftershave, overpowering and cloying, mixed with the faint sweat of nerves he tried to mask with that perfect neighbor smile, too wide, too rehearsed. Sarah Collins, always the busybody, writing things down, whispering to Linda about my late nights. You want the truth? I know what you're after. Dig too deep, and you'll find out how thin these walls really are. His words uncoiled slowly, each one probing for weakness, revealing the control freak beneath the facade. The man who alphabetized his trash bins and patrolled the block like it was his personal fiefdom. Sarah's throat tightened, her mind racing through the fragments she'd pieced together. Tommy's wild claims about shadows in the Thompsons' backyard. Linda's tearful account of glimpsed faces at her window. Now, with Mark this close, the stories twisted into something personal, invasive. Was that a flicker in his eyes? A promise of retaliation? Her skin prickled, every creak of the building amplifying into footsteps, every shadow hinting at watchers just beyond the door. She wanted to bolt, but her drive pinned her. Uncover it, expose the rot before it spread. Harris moved forward, placing a hand on Mark's shoulder, firm but not aggressive. Back off, Mark. Threatening a neighbor won't solve whatever's eating at this place. His tone carried the weight of his fear, the gnawing doubt that he couldn't shield them all, that cynicism whispering human nature's endless capacity for deceit. Yet he pressed on, determined to thread order from chaos, even as the room's oppressive quiet pressed back. Mark shrugged off the touch, his laugh brittle, forced. Threat? Just friendly advice. But go on, Sarah. Share your little theories with the detective. See how long it takes before everyone turns on you. He turned then, sauntering toward the exit, but not before glancing back, that smile lingering like a stain. Sarah exhaled shakily, retrieving her notebook with hands that felt foreign, unsteady. The meeting's earlier confessions echoed in her ears, the shared unease about unmarked vans, whispers of surveillance, now amplified into a web closing in. Paranoia bloomed cold in her chest, every face in the community a potential mask. Harris watched her, his skepticism softening into reluctant concern. "You okay?" he asked, but she heard the subtext. How deep does this go? And who watches the watchers? The center's walls seemed to lean inward, trapping the dread, as the first threads of isolation tightened around her resolve. Sarah's breath caught, the air thick with the weight of Mark's accusation, his shadow a suffocating veil over her thoughts. Dread coiled in her gut like barbed wire, twisting tighter as his words echoed in the oppressive silence. Hours blurred into a haze of frantic pacing through her dimly lit apartment, every creak of the floorboards amplifying the isolation. Cornered, her mind fractured under the strain, desperation clawed its way to the surface, urging her toward the one path that could shatter the facade before it consumed her whole. Sarah's hand shot out, slamming against the community center's bulletin board, the pinned flyers fluttering down like startled birds. Mark flinched, his polished smile cracking as papers rained between them. "Mark, what the hell?" Tommy Reed's voice boomed from the hallway's end, his boots thudding heavy against the linoleum as he stormed in, keys jangling from his belt like a sheriff's warning. He scanned the scene, Sarah's wide eyes, Mark's rigid posture, and planted himself between them, shoulders squared. I heard raised voices from the parking lot. This about that yard business again? Mark recovered fast, straightening his tie with a practiced flick. Tommy, perfect timing. Sarah here's been wandering. Last night, in my backyard. I just wanted to clear the air, neighbor to neighbor. His words slithered out smooth, but his eyes darted to the main hall doors, where muffled chatter leaked from the monthly potluck setup. Control the narrative. Keep it perfect. Sarah's breath caught, heat rising in her chest. Cornered, yes, but not silenced. The weight of last night's shadows pressed in, the faint scrape of tools in Mark's shed, the glint of something metallic under moonlight. She couldn't bury it any more. Clear the air? Tommy, you need to hear this. All of you. Her voice pitched higher, drawing heads from the hall. A few neighbors paused mid-conversation, forks hovering over casseroles. Tommy's brow furrowed, his protective stance shifting to vigilance. Sarah? What's going on? If it's trouble, spit it out. He glanced at Mark, suspicion flickering like a shorted wire. She stepped forward, ignoring Mark's subtle grab at her elbow. It's not just wandering. I saw things. Tools that don't belong in a garden shed. Restraints, wires, stuff that screams wrong. And the noises. Late nights, like someone's trapped. The words tumbled out, desperate, her caution fracturing under the dread coiling in her gut. Faces turned now, a ripple of whispers cutting through the room's clatter of plates and coffee urns. Ostracism be damned, the truth clawed free. Mark's face paled, control slipping like wet soap. Lies. She's paranoid, Tommy. Always has been. Jealous of a tidy life. But his voice wavered, the perfect neighbor facade splintering as a woman near the dessert table gasped, clutching her purse tighter. Tommy's fists clenched at his sides, the impulsive fire igniting. Restraints? In your shed? He rounded on Mark, voice dropping to a growl that vibrated the air. You got something to say? Or do I start checking yards myself? For the community, for the kids. His eyes bored in, protective fury barely leashed, the fear of unseen threats now a live wire between them. The room hushed, the oppressive silence broken only by a dropped spoon clinking sharp against tile. Sarah's pulse thundered, paranoia blooming as eyes turned accusatory, on her, on Mark, the social threads tightening into knots. Mark backed a step, sweat beading on his forehead, his shadow self exposed in the fluorescent glare, the fraud unraveling, validation crumbling. Whispers swelled into murmurs, neighbors edging closer, the confrontation igniting like dry tinder. Sarah swallowed hard, dread sinking deeper, a cold vice around her ribs. She'd cracked it open, but the unraveling pulled them all in, secrets spilling, trust fraying, the perfect lives fracturing under the weight of what hid in plain sight. Hours blurred into a suffocating haze after the confrontation, the echo of slamming doors and unspoken accusations clinging like damp fog. Sarah's pulse thrummed with unrelenting unease, the neighbor's shadow lengthening in her mind, twisting every doubt into dread. By midnight, in the dim glow of her cluttered apartment, she fired off terse messages to those few she trusted, faces etched with shared suspicions. The weight of their buried findings pressed heavier now, pulling her toward the clandestine huddle that loomed, fraught with unspoken perils. This can't be happening here, not now, with the flyers still drifting like accusations. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears as Tommy burst through the door, his broad frame filling the hallway's dim light, eyes locked on Mark like a predator scenting blood. Mark straightened, brushing a crumpled notice from his shoulder, his face a mask of feigned surprise that didn't reach his eyes. "Read," Mark said, voice smooth as oiled hinges. "Just a misunderstanding. Sarah here's got some wild ideas about—" "Save it," Tommy cut in, striding forward, his work boots scuffing the floor with deliberate force. He positioned himself between them, shoulders squared, the faint scent of sawdust and sweat clinging to his shirt. Sarah stepped back, her fingers curling into fists at her sides, the sting of paper cuts from the bulletin board grounding her. She needed this, needed them, to see what she'd uncovered. The photos tucked in her pocket, grainy shots of Linda Thompson's garage at midnight, shadows moving where no one should be. Tommy's gaze flicked to her, sharp and assessing. "You okay? What'd he say?" "Not here," Sarah whispered, glancing at the open door where voices echoed from the hall. Neighbors chatting about bake sales, oblivious. Her throat tightened. One wrong word and the whole cul-de-sac would turn on her. Whispers branding her the crazy one. But the alternative, staying silent while Linda's kindness hid whatever festered behind that perfect picket fence, churned worse. "We need Linda, now. My place, 10 minutes. Mark's laugh was low, almost pitying. "Stirring pots, Sarah? Careful, or you'll drown." Tommy's hand shot out, gripping Mark's arm just above the elbow. Firm, unyielding. "Walk away, Thompson. Family business or not, this ends." Mark yanked free, rubbing the spot, his smile twisting into something colder, before he pivoted and left, footsteps fading into the murmur outside. Sarah exhaled, ragged. Tommy nodded once, already pulling his phone. "I'll get her. She owes me for that fence fix last month." His voice held an edge, protective but laced with the impatience she knew simmered beneath. The man who'd once swung a bat at a prowler without a second thought. 15 minutes later, they huddled in Sarah's dim kitchen, the overhead bulb casting harsh shadows across the scarred oak table. Linda arrived last, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum, a faint floral perfume cutting through the stale air of uneaten takeout. She slid into a chair, smoothing her blouse with manicured nails, eyes darting between them like a cornered animal playing calm. "Tommy said it's urgent," Linda said, forcing a smile that didn't crinkle her eyes. "What's this about? The center drama?" Sarah spread the photos across the table. Blurry figures unloading boxes under cover of night. The Thompson garage door ajar. Something metallic glinting inside. Her voice came out steady, though dread coiled in her gut. "You tell me. Late-night deliveries? To a house that's supposed to be empty while you're at choir practice?" Linda's fingers froze mid-air, hovering over a photo. Color drained from her face, but she recovered with a brittle laugh. "Surveillance now? Paranoia doesn't suit you, Sarah. That's just junk from the attic, old tools." Tommy leaned forward, his chair creaking under his weight, knuckles whitening on the table's edge. "Bull. I saw the padlocks on that shed last week. What's really in there, Linda? We protect our own, community first. But lies? That ends tonight." Linda's gaze hardened, the caring neighbor facade cracking like thin ice. "You think you know me? My family's name built this street. You poke around and it all unravels. For all of us." Her words hung, laced with threat, her anxious fidgeting giving way to something sharper, manipulative, as if weighing how to twist this back on them. Sarah's skin prickled, the room closing in with the weight of unspoken horrors. Unease twisted deeper, trust shattered, yet the plan formed in whispers. Watch the house, gather proof, while shadows lengthened, promising no easy escape. 3 days blurred into a haze of shattered trust and sleepless nights, the confrontation's echoes clawing at Sarah's mind like shadows in an unlit room. The flyer's accusations lingered, fueling a gnawing suspicion that twisted deeper with every unanswered question. Now, huddled in the dim basement with the group, the air thickened with unspoken dread, their faces etched with the weight of secrets pressing in from all sides. That's when Detective Harris knew. The neighbor's kindly wave over the fence had been a lie, a thin veil over something rotten. He leaned forward in the cramped living room of Linda's house, the faded floral wallpaper pressing in like forgotten regrets, the scent of stale coffee clinging to the air. Tommy paced the threadbare carpet, his boots thudding with each step, fists clenched as if ready to punch through the tension itself. Linda sat rigid on the sagging couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her cardigan, eyes darting between the men like a cornered animal plotting its escape. "We can't ignore this anymore," Harris said, his voice low and edged with gravel, sliding a crumpled envelope across the coffee table scarred by years of neglect. "These aren't pranks. They're targeted." Tommy stopped mid-stride, snatching the paper before it could flutter to the floor. His face flushed red, veins bulging at his temples as he scanned the typed words. "Stop digging, or you'll bury your own secrets." The ink bled slightly at the edges, as if the sender's hand had trembled with rage. "Who the hell sent this? That bastard next door? Mark? I saw him earlier, smirking like he owned the place." Linda's laugh came sharp, too quick, slicing through the room. She uncrossed her legs, leaning in with a smile that didn't touch her eyes, her perfume, a cloying floral, wafting stronger now, masking the undercurrent of sweat. "Tommy, calm down. You're jumping to conclusions. Mark's been nothing but helpful since we moved in. Remember the cookies? The way he fixed the fence?" Her words flowed smooth, persuasive. But Harris caught the flicker in her gaze, the way she glanced at the window as if expecting shadows to stir outside. Harris shook his head, disillusionment etching deeper lines into his face. He'd seen too many facades crack like this. Neighbors turning into nightmares, trust dissolving into suspicion. Helpful? Or buying time? This message came to me yesterday, slipped under my car wiper at the station. Same phrasing as the one Linda got last week. Affairs, plural. Someone knows we're talking, connecting dots about the disappearances. Tommy crumpled the note in his fist, his breath coming in short bursts, impulsive energy crackling off him like static. He wanted to storm next door, smash through the lies, protect them all before it was too late. Before his failure let harm slip through. "We end this now. I go over there, drag the truth out. No more games." "No!" Linda snapped, her voice rising, desperate edges fraying her control. She stood, placing a hand on his arm, firm, guiding, as if steering a child from danger. But her grip tightened, manipulative intent hidden in the feigned concern. "That'll make you look unhinged, Tommy. Weak. Let Harris handle it legally. We play smart, keep the upper hand." Her fear gnawed beneath, the terror of exposure, of her own carefully built image crumbling under scrutiny. Harris watched them, cynicism coiling in his gut like smoke. Humans always hid their shadows, aggression in Tommy's glare, manipulation in Linda's touch. He feared for the vulnerable ones, the ones like the missing girls, if they let illusions stand. Smart? These messages are escalating. The neighbors watching us. We confront them together, or the masks stay on, and someone gets hurt. The room pulsed with unspoken accusations, the clock on the wall ticking faster, each second amplifying the dread. Outside, a car door slammed faintly, too close, too deliberate. Suspicion bloomed thick, rooting deep, as the three of them stared at the door, waiting for the shatter. His heart hammered against his ribs, the neighbor's false smile twisting into a shadow that clawed at his thoughts. That night, in the dim glow of the precinct's bullpen, the team huddled closer, the oppressive hum of computers mirroring their rising dread. Fingers hovered over keys, the air heavy with the unspoken terror of unearthing buried secrets, as the first searches pierced the digital veil. The flicker of the screen yanked Harris back. A grainy photo from his first big case, the suspect's smile frozen in pixels, hiding the choke marks he'd left on his wife. He blinked hard, the memory dissolving into the dim glow now illuminating Linda's cramped living room. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, the plastic keys worn smooth from too many late nights chasing ghosts. "We can't just sit here," Linda snapped, her voice slicing through the stale coffee haze. She paced behind the sagging couch where Mark hunched, elbows on knees, eyes darting like cornered prey. "That bastard next door waved like he was our savior. But you saw it, detective. The way he looked at my kids' toys in the yard. We dig now, or we wait for him to slip in closer." Harris nodded, frustration coiling in his gut like barbed wire. He'd promised Linda protection after her tip about the neighborhood whispers. But illusions shattered too easily these days. People like her neighbor thrived on trust, and his cynicism whispered that she'd built her own walls just as high. "Agreed. Start with basics. Socials, forums. Mark, you said he uses an old alias from work?" Mark swallowed, his throat bobbing visibly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill draft snaking through the window cracks. Control. That's what he craved. The validation of being the steady husband, the one who fixed things. But exposure gnawed at him. One wrong click, and his own buried resentments might spill out. Yeah, Thompson. Wait, no, that's us. He goes by Fence King 87 or something. From those backyard chats. Just be quick. Linda leaned in close, her breath hot and ragged against Harris's shoulder, aggressive fingers jabbing the search bar. Desperation fueled her. Weakness wasn't an option. Not after years masking her own sharp edges behind PTA smiles. Type it. Now. The enter key clacked like a hammer on bone. Results flooded the screen. Mundane at first, handyman tips, fence repair ads. Then, buried in a defunct forum link, a shadow profile. No photo, just a string of posts under that alias. Harris's pulse spiked as he clicked through. This is it. Private, but the scraps leaked. The first post hit like ice water. A cryptic rant about weeding out the weak links in the yard. Timestamped the night Linda's dog went missing. Below it, a photo, blurry but unmistakable. A child's shoe, mud-caked, discarded in tall grass, captioned, "Lost and found, or just gone?" Mark's breath hitched, his hands clenching into fists on his thighs. The need to shield this revelation, warring with his fear of the fraud it exposed in their perfect suburb. Linda's face drained of color, her aggressive facade cracking as she scrolled faster. What the hell is this? Control the fence, control the secrets. He's talking about us, our house. Her voice trembled, but she jabbed another link, unearthing messages to faceless users. Hints of visits to quiet homes, tools sharpened for pruning. Dread bloomed in her chest, cold and relentless, her manipulative instincts screaming to twist this back, to regain the upper hand before it swallowed them. Harris's jaw didn't clench, it locked, his disillusionment hardening into resolve. He'd failed too many before, watched vulnerability twist into graves. He's not just nosy, this is a pattern, stalking, maybe worse. The words hung, unspoken fear threading through them. What if they were already too late? Mark shifted, defensive walls rising, but his eyes betrayed the terror. Of secrets not just next door, but clawing at their own door. The screen's glow pulsed, revealing one final post. A map pin on their street, dated yesterday. Silence crashed down, thick with the unspoken horror that the kindly neighbor's mask had shattered, leaving only the predator's grin. Hours blurred into the small hours, the dim living room pressing in like a vice. Harris's paranoia coiling tighter with every unanswered query on the screen. Linda's uneasy glances mirrored his own. Ghosts from the past, bleeding into their fragile present, whispering of unseen eyes. Unable to quell the dread, they ventured into the suffocating night, pulse racing, toward the neighbor's shadowed fence, hunting scraps of proof amid the oppressive dark. The faint metallic tang of rust from the loose window latch bit into Harris's nostrils as he pried it open wider. Moonlight sliced through the gap, carving shadows across the cluttered floor of Linda's living room. Sarah crouched nearby, her gloved fingers sifting through a drawer of faded bills and yellowed letters, her breath steady, but her eyes darting like trapped fireflies. Mark Thompson hovered at the edge of the room, arms crossed, his loafers scuffing the worn carpet as if anchoring himself against the pull of exposure. "We shouldn't be here without a full warrant," Mark muttered, voice low and edged with that false calm he wielded like a shield. His gaze flicked to the window, then back, sweat beading at his temple despite the chill seeping in. Harris ignored him, leaning out into the night. The alley behind the house stretched narrow and choked with overgrown hedges, the kind that whispered secrets to no one. Sarah joined him, her shoulder brushing his, solid, unyielding. "Look," she hissed, pointing. There, under the sodium glow of a distant street lamp, Mark's silhouette. No, it couldn't be. But it was. The man they'd been grilling moments ago now slipped from the back door of his own adjacent house, collar turned up against the dark. Mark froze behind them, his denial forming before they could turn. "That's not—" "Quiet," Harris snapped, finger to lips. They watched, hearts pounding in sync with the erratic drip from a leaky gutter nearby. The figure met another in the shadows, hooded, compact, face obscured by a pulled low cap. No words carried on the wind, just the rustle of fabric and the muffled clink of something metallic. Keys? A weapon? The stranger thrust a thick envelope into Mark's hand. Mark snatched it, glancing over his shoulder as if the night itself conspired against him. Sarah's nails dug into the windowsill, splintering paint. That's payoff money. Has to be. He's been playing us all along, stirring up the neighborhood feuds, pointing fingers at Linda to cover his tracks. Her voice cracked, determination warring with the paranoia gnawing at her edges. What if the whole community was laced with his lies? What if she'd trusted the wrong faces, slept with doors unlocked? Mark lunged forward, grabbing Harris's arm. You see nothing. It's a misunderstanding. Old debts. Nothing more. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated in the dim light, the mask of the concerned neighbor cracking to reveal the fraud beneath. But his grip trembled, betraying the fear that clawed him. Exposure, the unraveling of his carefully spun web of control. Harris shook him off, disillusionment hardening his features. He'd seen this dance before, smiles hiding chokeholds, communities crumbling under one man's deceit. Debts don't meet in alleys at midnight. He pulled his phone, thumb hovering over record, the vulnerable faces of the block flashing in his mind. Families he'd sworn to shield, now pawns in Mark's game. Failure wasn't an option, but doubt wormed in. The stranger could be anyone, watching them watch. The figures parted abruptly. Mark bolted back inside his house, the back door slamming like a verdict. Sarah exhaled sharply, rubbing her arms against a chill that had nothing to do with the night. We tell everyone, now. But her eyes scanned the alley, paranoia blooming, shadows shifting, eyes in every window. The truth was out, jagged and real. Yet it only deepened the dread. What else lurked in the web? Hours blurred into a haze of whispered doubts after they slipped away from Linda's shadowed clutter, the scraps of paper burning like accusations in Sarah's pocket. Betrayal coiled in Harris's gut, a venomous dread that sleep couldn't touch. By midnight, the compulsion gripped him. He couldn't wait for answers. Under the neighbor's looming eaves, he crouched in the damp chill, rigging the hidden lens with trembling hands, the air thick with unspoken horrors yet to unfold. The warmth of another body, absent in the cramped van's back seat. Sarah's skin prickled against the cold vinyl, her pulse a lone drumbeat in the suffocating quiet. Tommy hunched over the laptop screen, his knuckles white on the edges, while Mark, supposed ally, reluctant informant, shifted in the driver's seat, his cologne a faint, cloying ghost that no longer masked the sweat beating on his neck. We shouldn't be here, Mark muttered, voice low and edged like a blade half-sheathed. His eyes flicked to the rear view, catching Sarah's reflection, accusatory even in the dash glow. This is crossing lines. Linda's stuff was one thing, private, contained. But spying on my own street? You're dragging me into your mess. Sarah ignored him, leaning closer to the feed from the tiny camera they'd wedged into the neighbor's overgrown hedge earlier that evening. The lens captured the back of Elias Grant's house. Elias, the pillar of the block association, the one who'd whispered doubts about Linda's instability until the whole cul-de-sac turned on her. Now, in the grainy night vision, his porch light flickered on, casting elongated shadows that clawed at the lawn. Lines were crossed when he started isolating families, she said, her words clipped, forcing steel into the tremor she felt building. Doubt gnawed at her. What if this was just her suspicion spiraling, painting phantoms? But the drive pushed her forward, consequences be damned. Ostracism felt distant compared to the rot she'd glimpsed in those letters back at Linda's. Tommy snorted, jabbing the keyboard to zoom in. Safety's not a line, Mark. It's a wall. And if Grant's poking holes in it, we plug him now. His agitation boiled over in the confined space, leg bouncing like a live wire. He glanced at Sarah, protective instinct flaring, but undercut by the fear twisting his gut. Failing them meant the shadows won. Impulsivity itched at him. One wrong move, and he'd charged the door himself. The screen sharpened on Elias emerging from his back door, a silhouette bulked by something heavy slung over his shoulder. Not groceries. A body? Sarah's breath caught, the van's stale air thickening in her throat. Elias paused, glancing around with the practiced ease of routine, then dragged the bundle toward the detached garage. Fabric tore faintly, audible even through the mic, revealing a glimpse of pale skin, a limp arm flopping like discarded meat. A muffled groan escaped, human, desperate. Mark's hand shot to the ignition. "Turn it off, that's not— we need to go. Now!" His voice cracked, defense crumbling into raw panic. Secrets clawed at him, the fraud he'd built his life on teetering. Control slipped. Validation from this tight-knit hell he'd curated now poisoned him. But Sarah grabbed his wrist, nails digging in. "You knew, didn't you? The meetings, the concerns, it was all cover." Betrayal bloomed in her chest, hot and choking, as pieces snapped together. Elias's manipulations weren't just whispers, they hid something feral, a double life of coercion bleeding into violence. The community he'd puppeteered, Mark included, had enabled it. Tommy lunged forward, slamming the laptop shut. "Call it in, anonymously." Impulse overrode caution, his aggression surging like bile. But Mark wrenched free, eyes wild. "You expose him, you expose everything, me included." The van rocked as he floored it, tires screeching into the night, leaving the camera's unblinking eye to witness the garage door grind shut on the horror within. Sarah stared at the blank screen, the absence of light now a void, swallowing trust whole. The web tightened, deceit uncoiling to strangle them all. Hours blurred into a suffocating drive through rain-slicked streets, the van's confines amplifying Sarah's mounting desperation. Back at the shadowed safe house, the air thickened with unspoken fears as she gathered the group around the scarred table, the laptop's glow casting elongated shadows. Her fingers hovered over the keys, pulse thundering, the fragile evidence a ticking bomb, yet unseen eyes watched from the periphery, dread coiling tighter in the oppressive gloom. Outside, the van's engine coughs to silence, gravel crunching under tires like brittle bones. Inside, Sarah's whisper slicing the stale air. "She's been playing us all. Emails, forged documents, bleeding the neighborhood fund dry for her side deals." Tommy's head snaps up from the laptop, screen glow carving harsh shadows across his face. His fingers drum the dashboard, erratic Morse code. "Show me. Now." Agitation coils in his voice, a spring wound too tight, his eyes flicking to the rear view, where Mark's silhouette tenses in the driver's seat. But Sarah ignores the informant, thrusting her phone forward, the evidence a cascade of screenshots. Linda's alias accounts, siphoned checks masked as community aid, whispers of blackmail threading through HOA records. Each reveal lands like a spark on dry tinder, her determination a blade she can't sheathe, even as Paranoia whispers that every shadow in the van hides a betrayer. "She's not just crooked," Sarah presses, voice threading higher. "She's rigged the whole block. Votes, favors, turning us against each other to cover her tracks." Conflict churns in her gut, the fear of isolation gnawing deeper. One wrong word, and the community she'd fought to trust would brand her the hysteric. Tommy leans in, breath hot and uneven, his impulsive edge sharpening. "We take her down. Tonight. I won't let this poison spread." His hand balls into a fist, knuckles paling, the drive to protect surging like bile. Visions of harm flashing behind his eyes, failures he can't afford. The van door wrenches open before Sarah can respond. Linda Thompson looms there, streetlight haloing her silhouette, her smile a fracture in the night, too wide, too knowing. Desperation flickers in her eyes, masked by that caring veneer cracking at the edges. "Fancy meeting you here, poking around my business." Her voice drips saccharine, but aggression undercuts it, a hiss through clenched teeth. She steps closer, invading the cramped space, her perfume, floral rot, clogging the air like fog. How she'd tailed them, Sarah doesn't question. The woman's web was always invisible until it snared. You think you can unravel me? Linda's gaze locks on Sarah, probing, manipulative threads pulling taut. I know your little secrets, Collins. That affair you buried, Tommy's bar fights off the books. One call, and your perfect lives shatter. Walk away, or watch it all burn. Her words pummel, desperate grabs for control. Fear of exposure twisting her features into something feral. Weakness she can't abide. Not when her empire of deceit teeters. Tommy surges half out of his seat, a growl rumbling low. Back off, Linda. We end this now. Impulsivity flares, his body a barrier, but Sarah's hand shoots out, gripping his arm. Cold sweat slick between them. Dread coils tighter, oppressive as the van's confines, her pulse thundering in her ears. Silence means safety, the community's fragile peace. Escalation invites the ostracism she dreads, her paranoia blooming into certainty that Linda's threat is just the first thread unraveling. But the evidence burns in her palm, truth a weight she can't drop. Choose, Linda sneers, leaning in, breath ghosting Sarah's cheek. Desperation peaks, a vice around Sarah's chest. Truth or ruin, the web closing in. She meets Linda's eyes, voice steady despite the quake inside. No more games. The words escape, escalation chosen, and the night fractures around them. Hours blurred into a suffocating haze as the van's confines pressed in, the laptop's damning files etching betrayal into their veins. Sarah's pulse thrummed with a cold, unyielding resolve, the neighbor's web of deceit coiling tighter around her thoughts. Back in the dim glow of her apartment that night, fingers hovering over the keyboard, desperation sharpened into action. The anonymous post would unravel it all, a digital spark in the oppressive dark, hurtling them toward irreversible chaos. The cramped back office of the community center, 11:52 p.m. Tommy's pulse hammered in his ears as he slammed the laptop shut, the accusation from Sarah's whisper still scorching the air like acid. Across the scarred wooden table, Linda Thompson leaned forward, her manicured nails digging into the edge, eyes narrowing to slits. What the hell did she mean by that? Forged documents? Side deals? Her voice cracked like a whip, laced with that false sweetness she wielded like a weapon. But desperation bled through now, raw and ugly. She shot a glance at Detective Harris, slumped in the corner chair, his rumpled trench coat reeking of stale coffee and cigarette smoke. You heard her! This is slander! Tommy, you can't let this poison spread. Tommy's chair scraped back, legs kicking up dust motes that danced in the harsh fluorescent hum overhead. Agitation coiled in his gut, hot and insistent. He'd promised these people safety, order, and now everything frayed at the seams. Linda's facade cracked wider. He saw it in the twitch of her lip, the way her fingers clenched, as if strangling invisible threads of control. Slander? He barked, voice echoing off the cinder-block walls. The emails are right there, the funds drained, your signature on every bogus withdrawal. You think we're blind? Harris stirred, rubbing his stubbled jaw, his eyes dull with the weight of too many shattered illusions. He pulled a crumpled notepad from his pocket, flipping pages with deliberate slowness. I've seen the prelim forensics. Matches her IP on those offshore transfers. But leaking it now. He trailed off, frustration etching deeper lines around his mouth. He wanted the truth laid bare, no matter the wreckage. Yet the fear gnawed at him. The vulnerable ones, the kids playing in these streets, caught in the fallout. His cynicism whispered, everyone breaks, eventually. It'll torch the whole neighborhood, Reed. Friendships, trust, gone. Linda surged to her feet, chair toppling with a clatter that rattled the metal filing cabinets. You wouldn't dare. I'm the one who held this place together. The bake sales, the patrols. Without me, you're nothing. Aggression flared in her posture, shoulders squared like a cornered animal. But beneath it, the terror of exposure twisted her features. She reached for Tommy's arm, grip vice tight. Delete it, now. We can fix this quietly. Tommy wrenched free, breath coming in sharp bursts, the room's stale heat pressing down like a vice. Impulses surged, his shadow self roaring to life, demanding he smash through the lies, assert control before harm swallowed them all. Safety first, always. But failing them? No, he couldn't. Not again. His fear clawed deeper, visions of fractured homes, whispers turning to shouts in the night. Harris watched, silent now, distrust etching his gaze. He saw the fracture lines in all of them, human nature's rotten core. Quietly? Tommy spat, snatching the laptop open again. The screen flared to life, casting blue ghosts across his face. Fingers hovered, then dove in. Anonymous account, neighborhood forum, the damning files uploading in a blur. Emails, bank statements, proof. He typed fast, words spilling like venom. The truth about our leader, she's stolen from us all. Attachments inside. Wake up. Hit post. The submit button clicked like a trigger pull. Linda's gasp sliced the silence, her face draining to ash. You bastard. You've just doomed us. She lunged, but Harris blocked her, his hand firm on her shoulder, disillusionment hardening to steel. Tommy leaned back, chest heaving, a grim resolve settling in his bones like iron. No turning back. Chaos would erupt, phones buzzing through the night, doors slamming, alliances shattering. But it had to ignite. For safety. For them. The neighborhood's fragile web tore wide, dread coiling thicker in the suffocating dark.